Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste, the Therapist Podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, and I have a special guest. I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Hi, yes, I'm Jermaine Morris. I'm a coaching consultant based out of Sacramento, California. The practice is based around a DISC assessment where I like to highlight self-awareness without judgment. And so what we do is we focus on how we operate, how we interact with humans, if we're system orientated, how we are when things are great, how we are when things are not so great, and just kind of helping us get a good base point for whatever change it is we want to make in our lives.
Yeah, and as you and I know, we talk about a lot. For people that are new here, Jermaine, we come on, we talk about an issue, and then we talk about like how to deal with it. Change is something that is just hard in general, no matter who you are or how much work you've done. You know what you know, and what you don't know is really hard to accept new information. Would you say that's accurate?
Very, very much so.
Yeah. I was talking to someone, and we were talking about a situation where she realized that she didn't have all the information, and she was telling herself stories about why a certain thing was happening. And we discussed how the mind only has the information that it has, and if you don't pay attention to the way you're framing it, your mind is going to go with old information.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I find that people are literally walking around feeling like victims because of the way they've told a story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's you know what you know. So your brain is just operating off of whatever information it had with the experiences it had when it gained the information.
Yeah.
So it's just if we are going off of information we received when we were 20 and
Mm-hmm.
now we're 30, the
Mm-hmm.
last 10 years our brain has just been basing everything off of what we
Yeah.
went through at 20.
Yeah.
So unless we're intentional about shaking that up, we'll just keep replaying the same playbook and the same
Mm-hmm.
narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm thinking about um, is that you brought up before the show. So Jermaine kind of has themes, and we talked about that last time he was on. But this time he wanted to discuss negative bias.
Yeah.
Tell people what that is, because it's something that I don't think people realize happens. Because, like we just said, you only know what you know. And so, if you don't realize that some of your framework is coming from a certain space, you don't realize that the reason why you feel the way you feel or doing what you do or seeing things the way you see is because of your internal world.
Yeah. So first there's a confirmation bias, which is basically there's already a way we think this is, or already a belief we already have about something. And then we go out in the world and we just see things to confirm it.
Mm-hmm.
If I believe that there's a bunch of yellow cars in my city, and I believe that, then I go outside. Every time I see a yellow car, it only confirms that there's a bunch of yellow cars in my city because it's what I
Mm-hmm.
believe. And then I'm looking for the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So a negative confirmation bias is the same principle. I believe bad things in particular areas, and I just look for things to confirm the thought and the belief that I already have that things are bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are crummy. People are bad people. And then I just look for the one time a car cut another car off and
Yeah.
honked his horn or yelled something. See, that's why people are,
Yeah.
you know.
And for people listening, as we're talking about this, it's not something that's consciously happening where you're like, I realize I think people are bad, and now every time I go out, like I'm gonna see bad people. Like it doesn't work that way. It's the same way if you look at. I always talk about the example of whatever car you're driving, you end up seeing that car everywhere. Not because people decided to copy your new car, but because your mind sees it every day when you get up for work and you go. So that's something that's always on your mind. So that's a literal thing, like where you can actually see, right?
Yeah.
When I think about our thoughts, most people are not self aware or are in tune with what's happening in real time and don't even recognize what's happening with their thoughts and how, um, because they think things aren't going to work out, or because they think they're no good, because of all of these things, the mind is, okay, we're no good, we're not going to work out. So now we're looking for the one time something bad happens, and that becomes a highlight. 10 things could have went right about the project that you're working on, or the thing that you're working on, but the not 10 things could go right out of 100. Sorry, I lied. I didn't mean that number. One thing can go wrong out of 10, right? You did 10 things for the day. One thing goes wrong, and now, oh my gosh, it's the worst. But if you really look at the math, 9 is actually a pretty high number. But because your mind, you haven't told your mind, like, okay, things are going to be okay. It's not looking for the 9. And 9 don't even exist. It's crazy because the math don't math. Why can't the 9 exist in my mind, you know?
Yeah. And the crazy thing now is, so like, there's so many buzzwords like through social media and all that stuff. And like, you'll hear one that's used all the time are triggers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is one of the buzzwords. And so what we'll think is that we have this perception because, oh, it's triggering something that's happened in my life. Mm-hmm. Where in reality, there are some people, it's not even triggering, it's just programming.
Yeah.
It's not triggering an experience. It's just programming of information that you become accustomed to hearing.
Yeah.
So that the 10 things that you did, you may not have even had one bad one.
Yeah.
But you're just expecting yourself to. So even though you had a win, but it didn't win the way you thought it should win, so you're manipulated in your mind to call it a loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the bad thing didn't even happen.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, yeah, but you know, well, didn't you ask your boss for a raise? He's not going to give me a raise. But did you ask him? Yeah, but the look on his face when he said yes, or the tone when he agreed. Or we're just so determined to create the negative attachment to the experience, even if it didn't happen, because we were expecting it to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's where we can be robbing ourselves of these experiences and these milestones and these accomplishments, because we're constantly looking them through the lens of there has to be something bad. There has to be a problem attached to it.
And I just want to reiterate, when Jermaine says we're determined to find the bad, it's not like, because some people may be like, yo, I want to see the good. It's not, when we say you're determined, let me just be clear. Your mind is doing what it's designed to do. It's supposed to help you with the information it has, right? And so if you're not affirming and reframing, your mind is only doing what it has information to do. So that determination is not that you are waking up and say, I'm determined for this to go right consciously, but your thoughts are doing it, right? And I always tell people, you can choose to get involved with what's happening internally or not, but either way, it's still happening. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do, to be in touch with the thoughts, because sometimes they could be all over the place. It could feel hard to really think that this is what I'm thinking about myself. I'll talk to people and they'll say something. I'm like, oh, can we pause? Like, you realize what you just said? Like, it makes them sad. They said it, but they don't realize they're saying it because it's always being said. It's just normal for them. But then when I say it back, it's hard for them to hear.
Autopilot programming can very easily lead to autopilot practices. So if you're just taking in stuff, you're just scrolling all day with no real intention. You're just watching stuff without really being mindful of what's on the TV. You're just listening to stuff without really thinking about what you're listening to. This autopilot programming then leads to the autopilot practice. Like, I don't think I'm looking for the bad, but the brain has been taking in so much negative stuff, so much judgmental things, so much comparison thought, so much. Okay, so I've programmed myself to be aware of all of these things. So now the autopilot goes to look for the things I program myself to become aware of. That's why it's important what we listen to, what we watch, the conversations we have, the things that are said around us, because that's the autopilot programming if we're not mindful or intentional about what we're taking in.
One example that has come up a lot over the last few years recently with like my Black female clients, their hair. Over the years, even I got a perm at 8 years old, and the conditioning in America is like straight hair is better. It's more presentable. It looks better. And over the last, I feel like 4 or 5 years, I've seen women grieve like the fact that they thought that was better and actually accept like their hair is their hair. But it's not like they were intentionally trying to look for a different message. It was because their environment and the things that people said around, like, especially corporate America, you don't want to be with no afro, or you're on TV. I'm seeing Black newscasters just not wearing straight hair. And it wasn't like somebody sat down and taught Black women that their hair was a certain way, but you hear the messages, you see the things, right? So that's another example on how your environment can shape how you see yourself. And now, and it's nothing wrong with straight hair if you want straight hair, but to want it because that's what you think you're supposed to do, that's the problem. And and so now they're like embracing their natural hair and going into the workplace and feeling more comfortable because they've reprogrammed their mind to think differently about their hair.
Oh yeah, shout out to COVID.
Yeah, that was the beginning.
Yeah,
you can't go to the hairdresser.
Shout out to COVID.
How to make this work?
Everybody either had to learn to do their hair themselves or just start rocking naturals. So shout out to COVID. But yeah, that's definitely when you're just taught things around you. You just hear the conversations adults are having. You hear the things when people comment on the people on TV or the people in magazines, and you grow up hearing that stuff. And then you get the bias to where you hear the negative things said about to the opposite. So when you're told, just sticking with the same example, the straight hair is more professional. The straight hair is more attractive. The straight hair is more this. And then all you need to hear is somebody in real life make a negative comment about somebody with natural hair. Now, no one ever directly had a conversation with you, but you hear it around. Okay, so now I've got this preconceived. So now every time I'm in between trips to the salon, now I have all these thoughts about myself, what people are saying about me, how I'm showing up, all these things. And all it takes is one person to look at me with a halfway side eye for whatever reason. And that just confirmed it must be my hair. It must be this. And we have that confirmation for that through that negative lens. I know that's talking about hair, but it covers a lot of different areas of life.
Yeah. And then the autopilot Jermaine's talking about, like, when we stop being on autopilot, I mean, like, the pandemic forced Black women to not be on autopilot when it comes to going to the hairdresser or getting that straight hair for corporate America. They were forced to embrace it. But like, let's say it's social media, which you brought up earlier. When you think about autopilot, like, I'm somebody, like, I enjoy social media for like comedy, food videos, and things that are funny. Like, I really enjoy it. And I'm like, sometimes stuff will come up that I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Like, I can feel it in the moment, like some negative, something bad that's happened or something like that. Like, I can see like my demeanor and I quickly scroll. Sometimes we might find ourselves like, because this is a generation of clickbait where they're trying to draw you in, realizing that things that aren't good for your spirit or things that are bringing you down or making you feel bad, right? Because how can I sell you something if you don't feel bad, right? And so that's the angle that people come from. They come from a deficit, so that you can, like, use iPhone for an example. I remember Les Brown said, their marketing is so well, you got people lined up for a phone they never even touched because of the way they're framing it. And because you only have, like, my phone, like, is like crack. It's not cracked, but it's just old. And I know they have like 3 and 4 cameras now and all this other stuff, but I don't care. But the way that they advertise is you only got 2 cameras, you got to get 4. And if you're not mindful and on autopilot, you're like, dang, my camera is horrible. I need to get another, and you can't even afford it. Like, not realizing that you are being, you're allowing the information that you're looking at to consume you, right? So I don't think social media is bad because it has its perks, but I think it's mindful of thinking about how you're utilizing it and reminding yourself that some people are just looking to sell you a product, so that you can, in order to do that, you got to feel like you're not enough. And I think when people start to understand that, they'll start to utilize social media different. Sometimes it may be taking a break or curating your feed. And even if you curate your feed, sometimes little things are going to creep up in there, but you don't have to like stop. Like you have to be mindful enough to know like, oh, this isn't good for me because I know how my mind can go to a dark place. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, very much. And shout out to capitalism. Like the United States is a capitalistic country, but capitalism is grounded in scarcity and inadequacy is what promotes most of the stuff that we have. So I'm gonna under the premise of there's got to get it now while before it's gone, get it while it lasts, get it before that, and you're less than if you don't have it. You're not as protected, you're not as safe, you're not as fulfilled, you're not as rich, you're not as happy, you're not as you're not as accomplished. So the root is scarcity and inadequacy. That's how you sell somebody something. If I feel like there's plenty of it and I feel like I'm enough, it's going to be a hard sell. So I need to make you think that there's not enough and that you're not enough. Mm-hmm. And so when we're not intentional about what we're consuming, the autopilot, we're constantly getting inundated with the idea of less than. So I go out into the world with a less than mentality and a less than thinking. And it's very easy to start seeing things in that lens. The negative confirmation bias is just simply, these aren't thoughts or ideas that are enriching me. These are thoughts and ideas that are depressing me. These are thoughts and ideas that are causing me stress. These are thoughts and ideas that are causing me pain. And I'm looking for justification to have them.
Yeah.
And so being mindful of that practice of like, why am I stressed about Mondays? How many actual bad Mondays have I ever had?
I know.
But the narrative is Monday's the worst day of the week. Mm-hmm. Are my Fridays always great? No, actually, I postpone usually all my nonsense till the end of the week. So actually, I deal with more problems on Friday than I do Monday. But the narrative is Friday's the good day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So like what are the things, the thoughts that I have on the negative side, like about Mondays or about this or about that? And what is the actual evidence to support that this is actually true? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when we're dealing with the negative confirmation biases, okay, I don't have a problem with this. No. I'm not actually stressed out in these situations. Mm-hmm. These things don't really bother me like that. Mm-hmm. Even though the world's trying to tell me I'm okay being 5 models back on the iPhone.
Yeah.
Like the phone rings, I answer it. Take pictures, get on the gram, whatever. I've not missed a beat because my phone is 3 series behind.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Like actually challenging some of these thoughts that we have, but it require to be intentional.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about how family plays a role in it, but I wanted to say about the Mondays. I don't know if you told me this story or someone else. I talked to so many people. I know the heart attacks happen more on Mondays because people are amping themselves up for work. Yeah. And I also know that a lot of people struggle with enjoying their Sunday because they're so amped up for Monday, right? Yeah. But somebody told a story about how they wanted to. I listened to so much stuff, Jermaine, but I might have listened to something where they talked about bringing in some like really nice fresh donuts.
That was us. We talked about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew a guy because Mondays were such an issue, they turned Mondays into Donut Mondays. So there was a good bakery on the way in. So instead of just getting, the cheap, like it was actually a good bakery. So, the apple fritters and the all this stuff, a couple dozen boxes of donuts every Monday. So then it turned into people who were kind of clocking in just before. People started coming to work early because they wanted to make sure they got the good ones and the best pick. Yeah. And then everybody was enthusiastic about Donut Mondays. Mm-hmm. And so all it took was, $20 worth of donuts changed the entire trajectory and productivity of the entire day of the week. Mm-hmm. And it was just changing. Nothing. Traffic was the same on the way to work. Like nothing, you're working the same amount of hours a day. It was the same workload every month. Nothing changed except the perspective of the day. And then it was a completely different game changer for Monday. Donut Mondays was a complete game changer for how the week went.
Yeah, that was good. And I think you said that a while ago, but I remembered it. And it shows you perspective is everything, right? So I'm not saying like you got to find a good bakery on Mondays. What I'm saying is you got to really think about how do I make how do I reframe the way I'm looking at Mondays? Do I play my favorite music on the way in? You like, what can I do to make it like a more relaxing start to my day, as opposed to setting my week up for like failure? Because you literally, oh, today's going to be a bad day. Today's, oh, it's freaking Monday. Like saying that stuff out loud, it matters, because your mind is like, all right, let's set ourselves up for a bad day. And as soon as something happens, somebody cuts you off, you're already starting. Not like, oh, they could be in a rush. They could have just found out somebody died. Like, we don't know what's going on with them. But all of a sudden, we're cussing out everybody. We're walking in the office grumpy because we've allowed our mind to dictate what we highlight for the day.
Yeah. And the car that cut us off was probably on the same thing. See, I'm trying to hurry up and get there. Here's this car going too slow. And and everybody's on the same, negative association to the morning. But those lenses that we look through stuff, like the intentional programming, because if, like I said, autopilot programming will lead to autopilot practices, about stopping to say, okay, I'm going to pay attention to what I'm looking at. I'm going to pay attention to what I'm listening to. I'm going to pay attention to the conversations, even if I'm not contributing to the conversation, but the ones that are around me and being addressed to me. Everybody talking about how bad the job is will have you feeling differently about the job.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You were fine, but then everybody come in and start complaining and whining and this and that. And all of a sudden your mood just choo. And now you hate the job.
Yeah. Or when you start the job, they're talking about this one person and how they're this and that. You haven't had any bad experiences, but because you're not mindful, you're on autopilot. Now you start looking at that person the same way the other person. Like, we've really got to start to look at how dialogue, information we receive, like everything really affects us, because our mind is taking it in. A lot of it's a small percent that is conscious and the other part's unconscious. But I think about our system operates off of habit, whether it's habits that are healthy or not healthy, they're still habits.
Yeah.
And we don't realize how sometimes our thinking pattern is a negative confirmation bias, is a habit that we've had for so long. And I feel like a lot of it is based off of real experiences that have affected us. And so I want to lean into thinking about like friends and family, right? Because we could take a break from social media. We can like go to the bakery and get, something good on a Monday and reframe it. When it comes to friends and family, that's another, like, I think, harder thing to work on when you've always been conditioned to listen to them or hear their stories, or they want you to subscribe to the way they're feeling, and you don't realize that is happening. What are your thoughts about how friends and family play a role in that?
And so I speak to myself personally. So there were certain things growing up and certain friends and family who had some of those tendencies to speak negatively about things. And when I realized that, okay, it's bleeding in. Like, my mood was fine and you've been here 15 minutes and now all of a sudden I can physically feel the difference of the nonsense you came into the door with. So it turns into a conversation. Like, look, let's just address it, because they may not be mindful that they're doing it. Like, I'm just talking. Yeah, but there's a negative slant to everything that come out your mouth. Like let's just, hey, it's happening. Like, can we change this up? Like, just see if you can address it first. Because sometimes, like I said, the person's not mindful and they're not married to it. Meaning that if you brought it up, oh, my bad. Like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was just, okay, no, not an issue. I'm not trying to be that guy or that girl. Sometimes you'll get pushback. Sometimes there will be some resistance. And then that's when we have to start making decisions. Either try to be proactive, like the donuts, like where we're trying to interject maybe more positive stuff or subject change. Or we may ultimately have to start removing ourselves from conversations. Some people are just on what they're on, and that's just how they're going to be. And that's when we have to make decisions for ourselves. And it's like, man, I love to see you, but I got to take you in small doses, because, I know as soon as I walk in the door, she's going to start in about how she's upset with my sister and how, mom didn't do this, or how the neighbor's always that, or And it's like, all right, prepare myself, give it 20 minutes, all right, I'm out. Like,
Yeah.
we have to start making those decisions and be, like I said, it's the intentional. If it's autopilot, it's autopilot. But if it's intentional, it's intentional. So intentional about what we're taking in, and then intentional practices about how not to be overly just bombarded with that stuff. And that's going to be some of our loved ones. Like, look, I got to get you in small doses, sample sizes.
Yeah, I love that, small doses, because for some people, some people, that things are so bad they really don't want to deal with the person. But there's sometimes, like, some people, a lot of women have talked about, like, their moms calling them first thing in the morning. Oh, this is happening, that's happening. And the guilt that they feel from, like, getting themselves together first and then, like, putting them on pause where they don't answer. And they like, you know what? Like, I don't mind being in the car because at least I know, oh, I got to go to work. So I'm able to, like, give them their 15 minutes, right? Because I have the bandwidth, as opposed to me rushing for work while I'm trying to, like, and you don't realize, for some people, they're making you their quote unquote therapist. Like, once they dump on you, they're good. And now you're rushing to work, stressed out about all the stuff you've heard. So it's not, when I think about friends and family that we love and how they may not know or they may not be willing. I remember my mom was in group chats, like, I think older people watch the news all the time. I think older people, like, watch the news because she would send stuff, and I'd be like, listen, Ma, it's too early for this. Can you not send stuff to the group chat early in the morning? And she stopped. And she stopped. But sometimes it may not, like, for some, especially some cultures, like Caribbean cultures, what you say really don't matter. So then you have to then you just have to be like, you know what, I can't, because you have the power not to answer. And people feel guilty, right? People are like, oh, how do I have empathy and take care of myself? I said, just because you're not doing what they want doesn't mean you're not empathizing with them.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
So some things that I've learned, sometimes you have to peel, even when you go a deeper layer. Like, I've known people who just need someone to talk to, and they'll talk about problems because problems garner empathy and compassion. And so they're just like, I just need to talk. And so they start off with, man, your sister and your brother and the neighbors, and they really just wanted the communication, but they may not know how to have the one they really want to have, or something else to talk about. So sometimes if we're catching it, it was like, did you want to talk about that? Or we can redirect. Like, so what? Okay, I get that the neighbors are always loud or whatever. Aside from that, like, what, you went to church on Sunday. How was the service? And then a lot of times you'll see an energy shift, because you shook them off that railroad track. It wasn't that they just needed to unload the problem. Sometimes they just needed the interaction, and it's like, now we're speaking about something that they're excited about, and something that they're having, that they had a positive experience about. And then it's like, okay, I'm glad you did. Okay, I got to get ready to go to work though. So I'll talk to you later. And now they got their last reaction with you was a positive experience, and yours was with them. And that's the end, as opposed to them unloading all the negative stuff on you. Now you're not even a therapist, you're a receptacle for all of the problems and negative stuff they had. Now you need to go into your day with their problems on top of your own. They feel lighter. But instead of it being one-sided, if you can kind of redirect to a more positive one, it's both sides have a better experience.
I love that. That's a real, I've never thought about it like that, but Jermaine's right. And that's a really great reframe, especially for people that want to keep that relationship going, but they're struggling with how it is. You can interrupt that cycle, because clearly some people that we deal with have this negative bias confirmation, right? And so, like, they was at church and they had a good service, but they're focusing on the thing that happened, or the thing that the Mother Jones said after church, as opposed to the 2 hours they were in church. And to be able to redirect that, you're helping them highlight an area that they're not realizing that they're being dismissive about.
Yeah. Because it's, like I said, being intentional, especially the older we get. The cement's a little harder. And so we just get in a pattern of we may be a pattern of complainers, or a pattern of looking for the negative, or looking for that one bad thing and the nine, the good that happened. And so sometimes we have to help people if we're invested that way. It's not our responsibility, but if we so desire, that we're like, I want to keep talking to you, but I don't want to keep talking about all this negative stuff. So let me like, let me start, when you start going down this rabbit hole of everything problems, okay, but what about this? Or let me tell you about some things that may mean something to you that are positive. I know you had this bad run-in with my sister, but let me tell you about what your nephew did. Let me tell you what your grandson did. Let me tell you about, what grandma did if they're younger. Like I know you're going through that, but I talked to grandma the other day and she was, she's doing better now. Maybe she's having, whatever, and start redirecting that way when we're dealing with other people. Like I said, this is if we're not trying to just cut bait. Like
right.
If we're trying to say,
I'm not saying you have to keep, but there's a lot of people that do want a relationship with that person, but don't know how to do it in a way that is healthy for them.
Yeah, you figure out. So I'm all about self-awareness. So figure out how deep your cup is. So you may have 30 minutes that you can hear all the things that are wrong with the world. That's where you brim off. You may not be wanting to give all 30 minutes to this one person this one time. You still got the rest of the day to deal with. So you may commit to 10 minutes of letting them vent. You got to get something off your chest. I'm not trying to empty your cup, but I may help you relieve some pressure off it.
Right. Yeah.
You may have to call somebody else after I hang up. Like, I'm not about to absorb all of what you want to
do.
But I may say, I'm in my head, all right, I'm gonna give it 10 minutes. Let your voice, the kids on the skateboards, the neighbors' music, the whomever, whatever, the people you hate at work, get your 10 minutes on. Now let's redirect to a positive interaction or something that we can both benefit from while we're talking. And so, and then even reiterate that, like, I thank you. I appreciate for feeling, open to express these things with me. And I love to be able to share these happy moments with you. So when they're talking, they're like, oh, there's value, that it's not just value of me unloading, but they get value speaking to me about positive things. So I have a value, I'm getting affirmed in the conversation when they get to speak about good things. So even though I have energy to release the bad, there's a part of me, even if it's ego, that wants to hear the good because I've been affirmed that there's value in that part of the conversation.
I like that.
And so when we're talking to somebody, take that 10 minutes, whatever you got, however deep your cup is. And then it's like, okay, I want to tell you about this really good thing happened. And when I was thinking about who I wanted to tell you. I know you liked A, B, and C, or you used to work with so-and-so, or just something about the office made me think about something in your living room. And I just want to share this good thing with you. And I'm giving that value that's important to me. And I'm giving that positive now direction back to them.
That's good. And I want to say, as I'm thinking about this, because a lot of times the situation we're talking about is one-sided, but there are relationships where we both are trauma dumping, right?
Yes.
And let's say you're trying to switch up the way you're doing things and you're doing what Jermaine says, that person may struggle with that.
Yes.
Right? Because that's not the basis of how the relationship was. So just be mindful of that too. If you both are trauma dumping and you're trying to change the narrative as you're thinking about how the mind is always looking at what it's being talked about or told, and you're reframing it, that might be hard for some relationships. As I'm thinking about friendships in particular, how that can be a challenge.
Yeah, you may be my petty friend.
Yeah.
Like that's the basis. That's the basis of our friendship. We're like those two old Muppets, the two old guys used to sit in the balcony at the Muppet Show. They used to just sit on and just hate on Kermit or whoever was on stage, like just talk about that. May be the core of you guys' friendship. Now all of a sudden you're switching up, and you're like, the other person's looking at you like, this ain't what we do. But then that's when you could start interjecting, like, okay, but I mean, maybe you give them a little bit, like I said, give them 10 minutes of, we making fun of Kermit's feet, but I like this, and this. Or maybe we need to start changing venue of our dynamic. Like the way we have a pattern of who we discuss and how we discuss them and what we do. We may need to change the vehicle of our conversation and just start on something that we never talk about. Or a different spin. There will be resistance because they're on a pattern loop also. But if we're interjecting, and then the transparency part, like, look, the way I've been doing things, it makes me sick. Carrying the negative confirmation bias has physical effects to us also. The high stress it carries, the weakened immune system, the always having a headache, back always hurting. It's always like all that stuff comes from is a symptom of some of that stuff. So we're like, look, I'm trying to feel better. I'm trying to get some of this weight off my life, off my spirit. So I love talking to you. We laugh. We have a good time every time we're together. But I got to switch up some of this subject so I can feel better.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
when we tell the other person that, they're gonna, if there's still value in the relationship, if they're really our friend, it's like they maybe put some slick comments in there, but they'll understand. It's
Yeah.
it's like if you have a friend that you've been your drinking buddy and you decide you want to stop drinking.
Mhm.
If they can't be your friend anymore without you drinking with them, then that's something for you to look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just have one more beer. Just no, I'm not drinking anymore. But if they can't let that go, it's the same thought process.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get off this negative stuff. It's affecting the way I see myself. It's affecting how I view my relationship. It's affecting my other friendships, how I see my job. It's I wake up like on the self-fulfilling prophecy of everything's gonna be bad, and the day ends up bad, and it makes me harder to get up the next day. Like, I'm trying to get off this hamster wheel. So I love hanging out with you, but we got to talk a little bit different.
That's good. Yeah. It's hard, right? And Jermaine and I just kind of talked about different areas, the workplace, the history, the family. But as you can see, change is going to start with you. Tell people how they can do that.
So it's hard. So one of the things you have to start doing is one thing we talk about really is challenging the thoughts. So when I think Monday is going to be bad, why is Monday going to be bad? Like, how many bad Mondays have I had? And if I had these bad Mondays, was there anything I could have done differently to have made my Monday better? Okay, so I'm gonna have to start doing some reconstruction when it comes to these thoughts in my head. I'm gonna have to start looking at them different. I'm gonna have to start looking at the negative influences that fuel these thoughts. Where do I get most of these thoughts from? I spend a lot of time on the gram. Do I spend a lot of time on the gram with positive stuff, or is it fueling some of these thoughts? Oh, actually, I get a lot of them from here. Or that's why you hear a lot of older people say, I don't even watch the news anymore, because it's always, it depresses them or upsets them, or certain people. Like, okay, I'm gonna have to start limiting some of these things that are fueling these negative thoughts. Another thing to look at is something referred to as glimmers. And so glimmers are basically the opposite of triggers. So triggers are what we always apply when we're talking about these things trigger a thought, feeling, or emotion that sends me into a negative space. Glimmers are the things that trigger, that inspire, uplift, or send us into a positive space. So what are those glimmers in my life? As opposed to, it's almost like if you're dating, instead of focusing on red flags, what are the green flags? Instead of looking for the bad behaviors, what are the good behaviors I want to be drawn to? And so reprogramming the brain to start to see the positive things. Instead of I walk outside and I hear whatever, now I think all these bad thoughts. What are the things I can walk outside of that give me good thoughts? Oh, I looked and the leaves are changing. Oh, I think of autumn. Autumn's a good time for me. I love autumn weather, and start going down that rabbit hole, as opposed to, oh, the weather's changing. Oh, that means it's going to rain. It's going to be leaves. So the drain's going to be backed up. It's probably going to be flooding on my street. Like, look for the glimmers instead of just the triggers. So it's a lot of reconstructing of the way we interpret and our perspective on things. And that can help to change the lenses that we're seeing the world through.
That's really good. I love that. And I also love how you start with your thoughts as kind of a priority, because we just happen to be talking about this negative confirmation bias. But in general, I do know people really want to change, and they try to do the work without realizing, like, up here is where it starts. It's not with Jermaine changing how he treats me. It's not with my sister being more kind to me, or my kids being not like, it's not about them. It's about, it's up here. And that's a like, I don't want to minimize the work that it takes to get into your head, because sometimes when I talk to people about just being still for 2 minutes is hard, because that means they have to feel and think about these things that they've been years of trying to, like, pretend it's not there. And so if you can work on being uncomfortable with stillness and trying to understand what you're thinking and what's happening, you'll start to feel more in control of your life and be able to change the narrative on the lens that you're seeing things under.
Definitely. When it comes to changes, it's a big part of it is it's fear. It's not that we're not able to change, but it's
Yeah.
whatever fear we have associated with it. And
Yeah.
when it comes to fear, I heard something I thought it was cool. It was like, fear is a mile wide but an inch deep.
Mm.
And so when you look out at how far it is to overcome it,
Yeah.
it's far.
Yeah.
It's a mile wide, but it's only an inch deep. So when we start walking out there to try to, well, what if so-and-so resists? Or what if so-and-so is that? Or how come if it doesn't instantly, all inch deep?
Yeah.
That's a mile wide of all the fears we've created.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very few of them are actually the result of a real life lived experience.
That's true.
So when I get out, okay, I'm going to try this new thing. What if I get donuts on Monday and nobody eats one? Okay, you spent $20.
Yep.
Inch deep. Like that's the pendulum swing of the consequences. Like you're out of 20. That's it. Like so the fear that we have attached to these things is what can keep us from making the changes.
Yeah.
But just being mindful of what we take in, like I said, those autopilot programming leads to autopilot practices.
Yeah.
If we're not mindful of what we're taking in, we're probably not mindful of how it's affecting us or what we're doing with those feelings.
Yeah, that's good. This is really good. Try to get more intentional for people listening, and just take it one day at a time, and understand that it really starts with you. And so if you find yourself spending time on trying to figure out why somebody's this way or that way, or just know that it's not really good use of your energy. It's more so, what can I change and how can I show up in a way where I'm not feeling how I'm feeling all the time. And that takes some accountability, which is hard, but necessary. So this was amazing, Jermaine. Tell people how they can reach you if they wanted to work with you or just follow you.
Yeah. Any interest in taking the assessment? Like I said, that's the DISC assessment. It comes with a 22-page report about you. So I would say human beings don't come with an owner's manual. This basically becomes yours. It shows and highlights, how we interact with people, communication, how systems orientated we are, how we interact. Like, it's very detailed. Potential blind spots in behavior, most and least ideal situations and circumstances for us. It's great. You can go to mykeystome.com. That's MYKEYSTOME, mykeystome.com. That gives more information to the assessment and coaching programs. And we can set you up with a consultation right there on the website. And then all social media platforms, everything is at JMorrisCEO.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. Appreciate you. And then we will be back next month.
Thank you.